God has blessed us to be a blessing. This is sort of the big idea, right? God has blessed us to be a blessing, not to hoard the blessings that he's given us in buckets like we talked about last week, but to be more like rivers that channel God's blessing through us to the world around us, that they may know Jesus, that our neighbors and our coworkers and our classmates and teammates and so on may come to know the love of Jesus through us as we bless them. Since we are a Jesus-centered church seeking to grow as his disciples, his followers, we're always looking at not only what Jesus did to save us, but also how Jesus lived his life, how he conducted himself. That's our example for living. We are literally to be like Jesus. So, we look to the example of Jesus for practices, for habits, for behaviors that will help us to become better blessers. He was like blesser extraordinaire, right? He was the best at doing this. So let's just look at him and copy Jesus. We're also using a book to guide us. This book is called Bless, and that's where the basis of the material is coming from. A book by Dave and John Ferguson. And Bless is an acronym that refers to these 5 practices that we're going to look at over the course of these weeks. And they're super simple. And the first one starts with B, that's why it's bless, B, and it's begin with prayer. That's what we talked about last Sunday. And the encouragement to the challenge for you was to, if you don't already know them, to learn the names of your neighbors and to start to pray for them intentionally. Pray for them by name. And be surprised, I think you'll be surprised, at how God begins to open doors and prompt you in certain directions and set up divine appointments as you begin to pray and for the people around you, at home, at work, at play. Today, the L of bless stands for listen. Listen, that's where we're going to go today. Now, some of you you're listening to an old song or a song on the radio or something, and you mishear the lyrics, right? This is a thing. Misheard lyrics is a thing, right? I have done this many, many times, and I'm thankful now that my Apple Music on my phone has this feature where you can bring the lyrics up, because I'm like constantly doing that because I can't really tell what they're saying half the time. Anyway, there was a few of these growing up that I always took me a long time to figure out what they were really saying. One of them was an Eagles song, Desperado, right? We know Desperado, great old Eagles tune. Well, it says he says in one part, he says, "You've been out riding fences for so long now. You've been out riding fences for so long now." Well, I thought for a long time it was, "You've been outright offensive for so long now." Right? You've been outright offensive. Another one, Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze, right? Purple Haze. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. I always thought he said, "Excuse me while I kiss this guy." You probably can think of many, many others, famous ones. There's a name for these. There's a name for misheard lyrics. They're called mondegreens. I don't know if you knew this. They're called mondegreens, and that is a phrase that was coined many years ago, probably 100 years ago. And it's based on a poem that people often misheard and misunderstood what was being said. The poem says, "Ye highland and ye lowlands, oh, where have you been? They have slain the Earl of Moray and laid him on the green." But people would hear that and they would say, "They have slain the Earl of Moray and Lady Mondegreen." Lady Mondegreen. And so, therefore, someone said, Mondegreens. That's a good name for misheard lyrics. Anyway, there's a lesson for you in pop culture. You're welcome. It's pretty easy to mishear lyrics if we're not paying real close attention, especially if you're listening to Nirvana. I mean, that guy sounds like he's got marbles in his mouth. But I also have this problem when I'm listening to a song. Maybe I've been listening to a song for a really long time, and I've never actually really stopped to pay attention to what the lyrics are saying. And sometimes we'll be driving in the car, and this song we play. Oh, I love this song, and the kids will be in the back, and Julie will say, Michael, yeah, do you know what they're saying in this song? Like, no, I've never really listened to the words before. Well, you should listen. Like, oh, whoops. It's easy to get into our own little worlds and not really be listening. Some people are naturally good listeners, and a lot of people like me are not. I have to be intentional about listening. Maybe it's because I've almost always got something on the go, or there's always chaos or noise happening around me, or maybe it's because I'm doing a lot of the talking. I don't know, but generally speaking, to be highly attentive to my surroundings is something that sort of takes effort for me. And my wife she's saying amen to that. I want to try something here, a little exercise, okay? We're actually going to take 20 seconds of silence in the room right now. We're just going to try this. And what I want you to be listening for is, I want you to be just listening to the room, taking note of what you're hearing, okay? And if you're at home watching this, do the same thing. At home, we're going to take 20 minutes of silence and just listen. Did I say minutes? Seconds. Seconds. Some of you would be grateful for 20 minutes of me just up here not doing anything. You can just have a nap. Okay, are you ready? Hey Siri, set a timer for 20 seconds.
20 seconds, counting down.
All right. Whoa. That went faster than I was expecting. Now, did you notice what you were hearing? The sound of things buzzing and humming, sounds of shuffling and whatnot. All those sounds were there before, but you didn't notice them because you weren't listening for them. But if you're pausing and you're paying attention and you're being hyper attentive, it's amazing what we can hear around us. So here's the big idea this morning. If you want to be a blessing to the people God has put in your path, you've got to be intentional about listening. Blessers are good listeners. Why is this true? It's true because when people feel unheard, they feel unknown. And when people feel unknown, they feel unloved. Let's consider how Jesus practiced the art of listening. We're going to turn to Luke chapter 18. And this is a real simple little story, Jesus healing a blind beggar. Luke 18, starting at verse 35. This is what it says. As Jesus approached Jericho, a blind beggar was sitting beside the road. When he heard the noise of a crowd going past, he asked what was happening. They told him that Jesus the Nazarene was going by. So he began shouting, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." "Be quiet," the people in front yelled at him, but he only shouted louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped and ordered that the man be brought to him. As the man came near, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord," he said, "I want to see." And Jesus said, "All right, receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." Instantly, the man could see, and he followed Jesus, praising God, and all who saw it praised God too. Oh, I just love these little miracle stories. Jesus is passing through this town of Jericho. He's on his way to Jerusalem. But someone calls out for him from the crowd, and he stops. As he's going, wherever he's going, he's always on the lookout and the listen for people whom the Father may be calling him to minister to, and that's the case here. And when you're praying for divine encounters, as we talked about last week, and you're on the lookout for these moments and these opportunities, you will start to get them. So Jesus has this opportunity. He pauses, he stops what he's doing, and he takes the time for this man. And look at how he interacts with him. Jesus started by asking a question. He says, "What do you want me to do for you?" And then he listened for the answer. Jesus didn't need to ask the question, probably. He could have assumed what the man was looking for. And maybe, as the Son of God, he already knew the answer. I don't know where the divine knowledge versus his humanity all came into play. But he asked the question. Why did he ask the question? He asked the question because this moment wasn't just about the miracle of healing. It was also about the relational connection. It was about giving the man a voice. It wasn't just about giving the blind man sight, but helping the blind man to be seen, to be heard, to be known, to feel loved. Because when people are heard, then they feel known. And when people feel known, they feel loved. Jesus did that over and over again. He would interact with people. He would ask them questions. He listened. He paid attention to people that others would pass by. And in doing this, Jesus sets the example for us. To ask questions. To not assume that we know the answers. To give people space and to speak and to listen, to really listen, to actively listen. Because when people feel heard, they feel known. And when people feel known, they feel loved. In the book, Bless, the authors say, one of the most practical and powerful ways we can be blessings is to simply listen. Listen to people. Listen to our community. Listen to our coworkers. Listen to our classmates. Listen to our neighbors. Listen to the hurts, the needs, and the pain of people in our lives. Listen to their stories and discover what they really need. Years ago, Stephen Covey wrote a very popular book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Any of you read that book before? Some of you? Yeah. All right. We've got some highly effective people here with us this morning, assuming they put all these practices into place. I read part of it at one point in time, and then I gave up on reading it because I'm not a highly effective person. If I was more effective, I would have finished the book probably. But in that book, one of the 7 habits is seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. And this isn't just a habit of a highly effective person. This is biblical wisdom. In Proverbs chapter 18, it says this: "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in disclosing what is on his mind." I noted, by the way, as I read that, the Bible in new translations, they typically use gender-neutral language, right? But for some reason in this one, they kept it as his. I thought, gee, it's offensive. I'm offended as a man. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in disclosing what is on his mind. In James chapter 1, James, the brother of Jesus, says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak." God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Let's do twice as much listening as we do speaking. Sometimes I'll watch clips from political opinion shows and news channels, and they have these panels with all these partisan people representing their parties, and I almost instantly regret watching these things. But sometimes I watch these things because I'm into politics. And these things are the absolute worst. They're perfect examples of not listening. Everyone is just clamoring to get in a word and make their point and argue and be defensive. I can't imagine anyone walks away from those political panels feeling like they've been heard or understood or acknowledged or loved. It's just a battle. And too much of our world is like that. Social media can be like that. Everybody doing a lot of talking and not so much listening. Christians ought to be among the best listeners. Unfortunately, sometimes the opposite is true. It's not only listening to people that matters, but also listening to your community. When I moved to Perth Andover, New Brunswick in 2010, I was fresh out of Acadia Divinity College, became a solo pastor in this rural community, and I realized very quickly, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I thought, man, when I get there, they're going to think, who is this 25-year-old kid coming here and telling us what to do? So I decided from the get-go that I'm going to, other than preaching and visiting people, I'm not going to do much over the first 12 to 24 months besides listening. I just want to listen to the Lord. I want to listen to the people in my church, and I want to listen to the community. The Apostle Paul took a similar approach when he went to minister to the city of Athens in Greece. We'll just turn there quickly into the book of Acts, chapter 17. This is the Apostle Paul visiting Athens, and it says, I'll read verse 16 first. It says, while Paul was waiting for them, some of his colleagues, in Athens, he was deeply troubled by all the idols he saw everywhere in the city. So he spent some time walking around the city of Athens and being observant, paying attention, noticing what's going on in this place. When we go to verse 21, it says, it should be explained that all the Athenians, as well as the foreigners in Athens, seemed to spend all their time discussing the latest ideas. This was a city where people liked to talk. This was a city where people gathered together and talked about all the latest. Oh, did you hear what Plato recently wrote? Oh, Aristotle said this, and so on and so on. Oh, Socrates, and right? They were very wise. They loved to appear intelligent. Verse 22. So Paul, standing before the council, addressed them as follows. He said, men of Athens, I notice that you are very religious in every way. For as I was walking along, I saw your many shrines, and one of your altars had the inscription on it, to an unknown God. This God whom you worship without knowing is the one I'm telling you about. Now, we won't get into this whole story. It's such a cool scene. I love it. But what I want to note here is that Paul, before he ever opens his mouth to share the gospel, he's listening. He's paying attention. He's being observant. He takes notice of what's going on in the city. He is a student of the culture, which allows him to be a more effective witness to the culture. So the question for us is, how can we become students of our own culture, students of our own neighborhoods? How can we be attentive to the needs around us? There's in the Blessed book, they mention the 4 P's of place, that was derived from something by a man named Rich Gorman. These are the 4 P's of place: pain, pennies, power, and parties. Well, what's this about? Well, we need to ask, when we're asking questions about our neighborhood, our surroundings, these things allow us to kind of frame some questions. So, for example, the first question, pain. What are the challenges that exist in my community? That's a question we could be asking as we're trying to listen and pay attention. Pennies, what are the financial or economic realities in my community? Are people here wealthy? Are they living below the poverty line? Like, where are the pockets of communities where people are struggling financially? What's going on in the economic realities? Power, who are the people of influence? Who are the leaders in my community? These are questions we can be asking. I don't like parties. I think that's a funny way of saying it. What do people in my community honor and celebrate, and even what do they even long for? What is the heartbeat? What's the thing that brings joy to my community? These are good questions to be asking as we're seeking to be students of the world around us. If we're taking care to seek and find the answers to these sorts of questions, we are well on our way to being a blessing to our neighbors. So, begin with prayer. Start to pray for people by name around you who you want to seek to be a blessing to. And then listen. Open your ears, open your eyes, pay attention, be hyper aware, ask some questions. The places where we live, work, and play are constantly speaking. If you listen, you will hear them.